Welcome back. Zane here with you, and thank you for joining me today. So today I want to talk about the system and how it broke in 2008 and how it's been on life support ever since. Now, what do I mean by the system? You've probably noticed that the price of everything is going up. Now, if you're already an owner of scarce, desirable real estate and you've benefited greatly over the last few years, then you're probably not going to want to listen to this video. I've been in real estate for many, many years, so I'm definitely au fait and very clued into how real estate has benefited over the last few years of this hyperinflationary situation where our purchasing power and the currency has been debased. People's savings have been eroded in terms of purchasing power, and yet the price of real estate continues to escalate. Now, the system broke in 2008. There was so much debt with the subprime crisis, toxic loans being issued everywhere. And I remember getting a loan for a waterfront property in Queensland back in 2007. And the number of hoops I had to jump through, the paperwork I had to fill out at the time was very, very minimal. I had a 20% deposit, and pretty much if any property or piece of real estate that you were purchasing back then, so long as you had a 20% deposit, it was pretty easy to get a loan. And this led to a lot of bad loans and bad debts being handed out. And what we saw was there was a collapse in the financial system. The whole system had to be reset. And the way they did that was by two measures. Number one was reducing interest rates to essentially zero. And number two was a term that they brought out for the very first time known as quantitative easing, otherwise known as money printing. But of course, they couldn't call it money printing because that would have spooked the hell out of the population, so they had to come up with a fancy word for it just so that people wouldn't take much notice. But essentially, the system has been on life support since the GFC, since 2008. The debt was essentially reset at that time and has really been demonetized ever since through currency debasement or money printing. And when they print money and they inflate currency, and they create inflation into asset prices, the value of the collateral goes up, whereas the debt essentially remains the same. So that's what is known as demonetizing the debt. The value of the assets go up, the debt that is against those assets continues to erode as a function of loan-to-value ratio. And this is really the system we've been on since 2008. And there's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines now. Number one, because they can't get in because asset prices have gone up so much. Just think of people who have been trying to save to buy a home. So there's that group of society. Then there's another group who are sitting on cash saying to themselves, you know, this system is going to break very soon and we're going to have GFC Mark II. Now, there's a lot of thought out there, that suggests a lot of expert commentary that suggests that we're not going to see GFC Mark II. What we're actually going to see is a hyperinflationary collapse. And the reason is because they cannot reset the debt this time. There is so much more debt in the system than there was back in 2008. Like I said, which has been demonetized through currency debasement, through money printing. And so we're in a phase now where, we just can't see a collapse because basically everything completely would shut down, and they just can't allow that to happen when there's so much debt in the system. They can't allow asset prices to fall to the value of that debt, and so the general consensus is we're going to see a hyperinflationary collapse where everything essentially just gets fully outpriced. A small faction of society who own scarce desirable assets are going to get filthy rich, and the middle class is going to dissipate, and we're essentially then going to have this thing they call the Great Reset, which is the 2030 vision of the World Economic Forum, where you will own nothing and be happy, because the greatest proportion of society is essentially going to own nothing. and they're going to be destitute financially. Their purchasing power will go to zero, and that will then pave the way for them to do what is known as the Great Reset, and that is basically to rewrite the rule book and to start instituting what's known as UBI, Universal Basic Income, a complete socialist society where the masses are essentially dependent on the government, and essentially you'll have what is known as a Hunger Games society where you have the very, very elite, people who are absolutely filthy rich, asset rich, and then everybody else who will essentially be serfs or peasants, so to speak. And that's the system that we're heading towards with this currency debasement. So most people are going about their day. They know that things are more expensive. They know that they can't get into the housing market. They know that rents are going up. They know that there's a problem, but most people, just have their head in the sand, and they're not prepared to do anything constructive to try and get themselves in a position that they can do something about it. And so therein lies the problem. The system broke in 2008. It's been on life support ever since through quantitative easing, through very low interest rates. Now they're crippling the system because everybody's in so much debt now. So they essentially were hooked in by these growing asset prices, low interest rate environment, and now they've tightened the screws. They've gradually increased interest rates, actually at a very rapid rate over the last 2-3 years. And so now we're seeing that a lot of people are sitting on the edge of the mortgage cliff because they bought into this booming housing market at low interest rates. The interest rates have now gone up, and yet their incomes have stayed the same. And so now there's a different problem looming where people aren't going to be able to afford to sustain their mortgages. And so this is the system we're in right now, and this is why I'm very passionate about sharing with people the alternatives, how it's so important in this environment to be thinking outside the system, to be thinking in a decentralized way, to be getting out of consumer debt as much as you possibly can. A lot of people obviously have a mortgage. It's very difficult to get out of housing debt in a hurry, but you've got to get out of that toxic consumer debt that is essentially tied up to personal loans, credit cards, student loans, that really, really high interest rate stuff that is really crippling. So we've got to get out of debt, number one, and number two, we've got to be looking for decentralized, out of the system ways to protect our purchasing power and also our financial sovereignty in this environment where we're heading into central bank digital currencies and surveillance programmable money, which is going to be tied to your behavior, to your social credit score, to your carbon credits, how much petrol you're using, how much meat you're eating, how many flights you're taking. Everything is going to be programmable based on these CBDCs. So you get to choose whether you want to be a part of that system or you want to join a parallel decentralized system, which is what I recommend everybody considers doing, and that is gold, that is silver, and that is scarce digital property in the form of Bitcoin. And so anybody who's sitting on the sidelines waiting for a mass correction to be able to enter this asset market is probably going to be sadly disappointed. I'd love to see that happen. I'd love to see a mass correction because that would enable me to add to my stack. But I just can't see it happening. And that is something that a message that I'm hearing more and more from a lot of people very, very credible in this space who are saying that it just can't reset based on the amount of debt in the system. And that makes one hell of a lot of sense to me. So we're going to have a hyperinflationary situation where asset prices are going to continue to skyrocket. It's going to continue to create a growing wealth gap. And so for me, the life-raft is decentralized assets. Learn about Bitcoin, read the Bitcoin standard if you haven't already. Bitcoin is a life-raft because not only is it the best performing asset by a long, long way over the last 14 years since inception, It came out in early 2009 on the back of the GFC for a very good reason. But now we're seeing mainstream adoption start to take place, and that's only going to escalate from here now that big fund managers and Wall Street is now involved in Bitcoin. I recommend, if you do get involved in Bitcoin, putting it into cold storage, being your own bank. I'm going to put together a presentation over the coming weeks. I'm going to share with people why that's most important and why Bitcoin is such a powerful freedom tool as we're moving forward for anybody who wants to get involved in it. But in the meantime, get your hands on the Bitcoin standard and start there as a resource. And then I know that you'll get a lot from that. That was the thing that really was a paradigm shift for me and made me really stand up and take notice and move forward in this space. I want to thank you for listening. Changing world we're in. It's important to realize that, there's three types of people in this world. We've got people who essentially are the change makers. We've got people who notice the changes and adjust their life accordingly. And then we've got people who just sit back, do nothing, and watch things happen, and then wonder what the hell happened. And so I would encourage you, if you're not going to be a change maker, to at least be in that group that notices what's coming down the pike and starts to adjust based on that, because the rules of the game have changed. This is Zane signing out. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like, and I'd love it if you would subscribe so that you can support the channel and be alerted when my newest videos drop. I want to build this community. Thanks again. Have a great day. This is Zane signing out.